decentralized marketplaces and zero knowledge reputations. This is something I've touched on before. The Agora needs a digital market on which you can swap anything that is very private, that nobody can take down. No more rug pulls, no more bludgy takedowns. Okay, the darknet markets, the centralized darknet markets that we have now are cool and all, but everyone knows. Okay, all the cool kids know, all the cypherpunks know that's not the way of tomorrow. Centralized darknet markets. We can do away with these centralized darknet markets and all the old online markets, really, period. We can do away with eBay, Amazon, okay? We can go further. We can do everything. And here's where I feel like maybe what I say is not quite what other people say on this. My thinking for a while has been something that I have a hard time explaining. I would like a protocol that at the very lowest level, it abstracts all market activity to its most basic components. But there are all kinds of different activities. How about renting out a room, Airbnb style? Let's say something like an Uber ride, okay, buying a car ride from someone. There are all kinds of different economic activities. They can all be described, they can all be formatted in the same underlying way, an abstract market activity language. Now, the good news is somebody's already made something like this. There's something called value flows, which is kind of what I'm talking about here. It is what I'm talking about here, more or less. Value flows is a way of describing all economic activity in a new way. It could be thought of as a new way of accounting, or it could be thought of as an API for the economy. In other words, a language to describe economic activity that is machine readable and thus conducive to automation, which could be smart contracts and stuff like that. I think starting there is powerful. So rather than reinventing the wheel every time you want to do a decentralized Uber, do a decentralized eBay, decentralized logistics, right? Whatever. Instead of doing that, all these things can be described with this protocol. So all these things can be implemented with this protocol. So rather than re-implementing everything from the ground up every time you want to make a new kind of marketplace, instead, you build on top of this existing abstract protocol because it could be used for anything. And you can have different plugins and so forth. You can have different front ends, is what I'm thinking. And this, I figured it would make sense to touch on the zero knowledge reputation thing, because the two are so intertwined. Because when I'm talking reputation, your reputation for doing a certain kind of work, your skills, knowledge, expertise in a certain area. It could be your reputation as a customer, buying certain things. So I'm mostly interested in the economic activity. And yeah, some of it could literally be something like a credit rating, maybe. Except it's going to be usually more practical than a social credit score. Like instead of it being by a central authority, it'll be in a decentralized way, and it'll be voluntary, and it'll protect your privacy at the same time. It'll just be, once again, an abstract protocol for defining kinds of reputation. Whatever. It could be whatever you want. Rather than try and guess what is the best way to do everything, I would say, let's build these abstract tools that are very flexible, that can be used to do anything. And then if you build it, they will come, kind of thing. Let other people play with these tools and see what works in the real world. And that, I think, will lead to certain standards organically developing. The cream will rise to the top, and we'll see what is truly needed. Zero knowledge reputations. This is something I've touched on before. The essential thing here is the zero knowledge proofs, homomorphic encryption, blah blah blah. Cryptographic magic, black box stuff that you don't fully need to understand, but merely know that using the magic of digital cryptography, you can prove something is true without leaking quite what it is. So, for example, instead of having a public identity with public records that everyone can just see everything you've ever done and it's all linked to the same thing, that's not what we're talking about here. That would not be good for your privacy. We're talking about quite the opposite, where you look at this protocol, this zero knowledge reputation protocol, and what you see is a mess of obfuscated crap. And no one really knows what the fuck is going on. You just know that it works somehow. That when you plug it in and you're looking for, a gigolo for your grandma's birthday, that you can get one of a certain reputation rating at a certain price point, and blah blah blah, and it's all cryptographically proven, but you may not know exactly who that is. Now, of course, in the case of a gigolo, I think who they are is part of the brand, so they probably would have like a certain name that they use for that and so forth. Especially if they specialize in grandmas, they might say that. But if you have something more touchy, right, you might not want a brand at all. If you've ever read left-wing market anarchists, like C4SS, the Center for a Stateless Society, those kinds of guys, left-wing market anarchists, they say interesting stuff like we should have more decentralized manufacturing, more evenly spread out supply chains, and rather than being super brand focused, a lot of goods should just go back to being commodities, right? Like way back in the day, they just used to have like a big white label on something that's just like rice. This is rice. This is flour. Everything was generic. Things that, truly are generic goods that you don't really like. Does the brand matter, or does it just matter that this is what it is? It's what you want it to be, right? Maybe you want organic white medium grain rice that has been tested for levels of fucking arsenic or whatever. That's fine, and it can say what it is. Who really gives a shit about the brand? Do we really need to be in a brand heavy world forever? Yeah, brands have a place, but a lot of times they don't fucking matter. And the super brand drenched world that we live in did not happen of its own accord. It didn't happen on its own. It happened in an environment of crony capitalism. So I'm not convinced that in a more liberated market that brands will keep taking center stage for every little thing, namely when brands aren't necessarily good for your privacy. Okay, there may even be a use for cells and individuals. Cells, but let's just say cells. Okay, the cells can be assembled to do anything: cut down speeding cameras, break people out of prison, whatever. It could be something pretty mundane. Do we want to give these cells brand presences where people know who they are and especially know anything about their history? Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think they want a brand presence. I think they need to be ghosts. Okay, you need to have no clue who they are, only that they reach the reputation requirements. In today's world, they're all organized in inefficient, slow, and hierarchical ways by handlers and cutouts, people who know, right? There's someone who knows who this cell is and who that cell is, and they help coordinate them, an embassy or someone in a foreign country or whatever, in an intelligence agency. But in this case, it will magically all be coordinated by smart contracts. There won't be anyone who knows who this cell is and who that cell is, and maybe even why certain operations are being triggered. You can literally create a system where, with no manual oversight, with literally no one in the world knowing what the fuck is going on, you can have teams of people being automatically assembled. But this can all happen like magic, okay, with no one knowing who anybody is. So this is a whole new level of decentralization, of operational security, a whole new level that was not even, you could not even do this before without this technology, the technology of zero knowledge proofs and homomorphic encryption.
All across the country, the people are awakening. Politicians are quivering and shaking. The fear of population that is not done.